is future Sumo principal Skeeve Stevens. Skeeve Stevens is a futurist who specializes in how IT and people interact. He presently focuses on the next 3 years in the areas of Internet of Things, virtual reality, wearables, and the network infrastructure that supports them. Skeeve's consultancy, Future Sumo, advises companies on those areas and what will impact them and how to evolve to survive. Skeeve Stevens.
Okay, I don't know about gently to the break. I'm known to rant about a few things, and this is no difference today. So let's see if this new technology I'm playing is working. So the Internet of Things, we've heard a lot about that today, ad nauseum. I've got a bit of a different tack. Mine is a lot about the risks involved, not just about spectrums, frequencies, and the cool things that are attached to it. So I'm going to briefly talk about, run through some of the applications, and some of them we know, some of them we don't. I love some of the things that Kevin talked about before because they've come up in my research recently as well. So basically, what is it? There's devices that collect and transmit data via the internet. This is nothing that we haven't had for decades. We've just now plugged it in. Whether it be automated factories, devices, it's just new. So it's not new. They first appeared in the late 80s. Devices in universities became common in the 80s. I think the statute of limitations might have passed, but I think it was about 92, when I was playing around hacking, I remember owning a whole bunch of Coke machines that were running Linux boxes or Unix boxes at the time, and we're able to install software on there and do things, but we're actually taking control of Coke machines inside universities, and that is essentially was the Internet of Things very, very early on. And they used to use those machines to let them know when they were running out of different drinks and when to run them fill up, and just use the internet to send them a message saying, you're running out of Coke, come and fill it up. So it's been around a long time. SCADA, we know about SCADA. Most people, it's industrial control systems. It's what Stuxnet used with the Americans and the Israeli governments writing the hacking software to take out the Iranian facilities. They're still very, very vulnerable. Only a year or two ago, I did some consulting for Four Corners about how vulnerable they were. Still very badly vulnerable. In 2008, there were more devices connected to the internet than there were people on the internet. And that's 7 years ago now. By the end of 2015, around 5 billion things. And we're about to have 1.4 billion smartphones. And by 2020, 6.1 billion more devices, and that's without all the micro devices. And by 2020, which is, we're discussing this morning, is only 4 and a bit years away. There's 250,000 vehicles online. So how much? What's this worth? And one of the reasons is we're going into some of these problems. And wearables grew 223% this year, 4.4 million Fitbits, 1 million Apple Watches sold in one day. They won't tell us the numbers, but it's between 3 to 5, perhaps 6 million so far. We haven't had Christmas yet. Estimates are that the IoT will add 10 to 15 trillion. There's a lot of reasons to push this forward. The rush hasn't even started. The Google Nest devices, people still talk about the temperature device. If anyone look at the website, they've got cameras, they've got a whole bunch of things already, none of which is available here. The Samsung Smart Things, Amazon Echo, there's one outside, you can just ask it natural questions. Again, it thinks I'm in Seattle because it doesn't, they don't acknowledge Australia. But all these devices are like crazy. I've got my Philips Hue light bulbs, all these sort of things. The Apple HomeKit, there's a whole section on the Apple website about what it can do, but there's no products for it. But apparently there's a lot of vendors about to launch it, and I think it was waiting on the new Apple TV, which is now hit, which is a HomeKit, the actual sort of home hub. Most people haven't really are aware of that. That's what it's supposed to be. It's got Zigbee in it, it's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. And there's dozens and dozens and dozens of companies coming. So this is the value and one of the reasons that we're going to end up in some trouble. So, jumping into the home, what have we got? Home automation. This typical classic things that we're all talking about at the moment. Heating, lighting, locks, blinds, cameras, sensors, power, etc. Medical. That's one of the other things, that in-home aging, in-home rehabilitation and things like that. Baby monitoring. Outside gardens, environmental. This is just at the home so far, jewelries, watches and clothes, entertainment, gaming, VR, etc. Implants, I sort of released a bit earlier, and that's what's in my hands. NFC one hand, RFID the other. These are quite common in some of the circles I hang around with. I met with up a friend that I haven't seen in 2 years. He had exactly the same, with just them swapped around the other way. And I was like, oh, this is starting to become common. But people get surprised by this and they go, oh my God. And I'm like, but it's no different to the RFID chips that every cat and dog by law is required to have. It's no different to that most young girls are getting implants for their contraception, which is 10 times the size of my implant. What is really the difference? People just seem to be shocked that I actually use it for something, as opposed to the other implants that are in things already. And everyone goes, is it safe? And I'm like, really? Now, home personal stuff. Now, personal devices. Yep, Shanti went there earlier. I'm going to go there again. These are the start of the things that are starting to hit. Online, connected, pleasure devices, and things like that. They're also the Internet of Things. They're connected. There's a lot of things happening. So in the business, your typical stuff, the heating, cooling, lighting at industrial levels, retail, the customer tracking, the beacon technology, that really hasn't hit here hard, but it's hitting hard. I've been involved in multiple researches with projects with people like Coles and so forth, wanting to track, and the metadata they collect is bizarre. Based on some of the things and the habits that we have, we'll know that this guy will come in between 5 and 6 on Wednesday, and that he'll most likely buy bread, milk, and something else. And if he gets towards the counter and he's forgotten the bread, you can send him a message and he will go, oh, and go back and pick up the bread. And it's a system being helpful. It's not really analytical data privacy thing. It's more of a, you want these things to help you, but the metadata actually can reveal very interesting things. And that sort of beacon technology, and you're going to be able to walk down going, oh, you buy Gillette razors or you drink Coke, and it will know and go, do you want a special? And all those sort of things, just based on where you are. So these are very important, and that's going to be massive next year. You'll see a lot of beacon people popping up. The mobile workforce tracking, vehicles, medical, the implants that I've got. I've already had multiple meetings trying to figure out the legals and logistics of implanting these into dementia patients. Because at the moment, if anyone's been involved in aged care and dementia, where you've got to go in, I used to work in aged care, and just trying to remember the PIN numbers at each facility to get out of the place was driving me up the wall. So imagine the doors being open all the time, but detecting someone with dementia walking down the corridor, and them just closing, or only letting people out that you should. And the only real illegal obstacle that is getting permissions of the next of kin, or the person that is in charge. There's actually no legal obstacle at all. Just not used yet, but it will be here. Hospitality, we know what you can do in a hotel. There are now hotels that I've been in Asia that know with RFID and Zigbee and that, if you've even opened the fridge, they won't even bother checking if it doesn't register that you didn't even open it. So, heading into industrial, some of this is very interesting research. The human-machine interface, the robotics. Nearly everything here is a lot of stuff we do today. It's just getting better and faster, but now we're connecting it to everything. The sensors, the waters, the driverless trucks. I found that interesting the other day, like the BHP mining trucks, those gigantic things. They've just released in the last month driverless ones of those. They don't even have people in them anymore. And same as the train systems that you, for some reason here we need drivers. In Singapore and everything, in other places I'm at, there's no drivers in half of these things. So I don't know why we can't do it. Power stations, building campus management. IoT by Echelon, it's an actual platform that everyone's starting to use. It's like an API for all these things to talk together. I talk here about farming. Farming is actually with John Deere and some of the things I was talking about harvesters. Automated harvesters, people logging in, support people logging in and finding out where there's problems. It's telling you where the soil's damp and all these internet things. Your entire field is not just organic now. There's devices everywhere telling you how to optimize all these things. So, one of the last key things is Metro and LGA. All these things that the city's using. We saw some examples before. Smart street lights, combining the technology. All these things are common, except the last one. I don't know if many people have heard of this, but it blew me away. It was something called Shot Spotter. They use this in San Francisco. It's reduced gun violence by 50%. They've got sensors all over the city, and based on a gunshot that fires, they will know, they will triangulate it, know where it is, know what type of gun it was, and be able to get there and know if the fire is still happening. They'll know, they can differentiate between a helicopter, motorcycle, backfiring car, and they know what they're walking into. So you can fire a gun, and no one's around, but they will come and they will know what weapon you're carrying. That is insane. And there are actually a lot of these, after those sniper problems in the last few years, they're installed through a lot of American cities. ShotSpot is just a very new version that uses IoT and communicating over the internet and all these sensors to give that data back in real time. So, cars. We know what the cars are like. We've got Teslas doing over-the-air updates. Google's partnering at the moment. Taxis, vehicles, long-haul transport, they're all going to be self-driving. 10 million self-driving cars, 250,000 on the internet. There's a market rush at the moment. Tesla's caught a lot of people by surprise. The biggest issue with a lot of this technology is actually us. You know, anyone over 40 that isn't dealing with this stuff every day, how are they writing the laws? You know, you could at the moment, if you're allowed to, pick up your smartphone, tell your Tesla to come and get you. It'll start from down the road, come up and park outside and wait for you. Now, that all sounds cool in this tech thing. What about the guy who steps in front of it? And who's insurance? Who's liable? And speaking of who's liable, this happened like 2 weeks ago. So a police officer pulled over a Google car for going too slow and didn't know what to do. There was no driver in the driver's seat, just the passenger. And he just literally went, why is it going slow? Because it was doing like equivalent of 40 in a 60 zone. This is what's already happening, and it's just very interesting. I thought that was a really good one. So, now, why is it called the battlefield? This is the bad part and why I'm refreshing all that. We've got a problem. The more spectrum, the more things online, the more devices, the faster we're about to enter hell of botnets, worms attacking these things. We've got problems now with, oh no, there's a new Samsung virus, and worrying about our handsets being taken out. We're talking about billions and billions of devices here. You know, we had the terrible situation in France. What about the 3 years in the future, where 1,000 are killed because they took out the heating of 10,000 internet devices in Calgary during the middle of winter, and people freeze to death? Or other things like that. Why not? You know, the laser vendors are lazy. There is no standards. They're a rush to market and a rush to make money. Look at all the wireless standards. You know, in AC was selling kit 2 years before it was ratified. Next year they're going to be selling AX. It's not due to be ratified till 2019. There's no global standards for any of this. Everyone's running their own little operating system. You know, and I've already done my hacking experience. The Philips Hue light bulbs, hilariously easy to hack. They're using such crappy interfaces, open, barely any authentication at all, and this is what everybody is putting out there, just to get the cool toys to market. The users have no idea. Just like a few years ago where they didn't even know about securing and putting a password in their Wi-Fi. That's the IoT world and what we're about to hit. They don't even know about pairing their watches and things like that. They don't know what's going on. It's just too new. And the worms and the viruses, the botnets, when people take control of 100,000 devices that still do what they're supposed to do, but they're running like little micro Linux boxes. You've got 10 billion devices in your army now. Infrastructure dangers, the medical utilities, you know, power and gas. We know what happened with the Stuxworm in 2010, 6 years ago. Well, what about the next war when that's targeted to take out real things? What about when it's taking out hospitals? What about when we've got Internet of Things and IP-enabled monitors, heart rate monitors, things like that, and we have our first hacking deaths? This is not a joke. We're connecting everything. You know, and this is a serious problem. You know, and there's so much more beyond that in the home danger and personal danger, with the amount of information you're collecting, the different personal toys that you might use, the gaming consoles, the things that are going to come out for kids. We saw what happened when you know, all the laptops and the iPads equivalent, then all the kid versions come out. They're all going to be IP enabled and online. People could take over things, sending things to your kids, all sorts of these things. I'm worried about, it's not really IoT, but things like Periscope. Everyone's talking about scoping now. You know, I don't even know how governments handle that. You know, we can shut down something that's X-rated on television and they're all licenses, but who can stop? I had an interview with the managing director and editor of The Australian, and I was explaining to her about Periscope. She said, oh yes, I've heard, it's just YouTube. And I went, you have no idea, this is live. When's the first murder via scoping? When's the first rape? When's the first schoolyard bullying? When's the first terrorist attack? Where there's 6,000 people who've seen these stories on the CSI and those sort of things, live bidding on people and things like that. What about when you cannot find them? And how do you rate that content? And everyone's online anywhere. What if people start hacking into your house and start broadcasting your cameras of your kids? We've already heard about the nanny cam hacking. You know, vehicles, that was something in the news recently, remotely controlling vehicles as they're driving. We've already had the talk at the Black Hat conference recently, which was really controversial because the guy hacked a jumbo jet airliner from his seat by splicing into the cables. He didn't do the bad things, but he got access to some of the systems. And they were like, oh my God, stop talking about this. You know? And he was restricted and he was like warned and everything, but it got out anyway. So, the security issues, the effect on the networks, right? We're talking all about bandwidth and usage and everything else like that today. What about the DOS attacks and everything else like that? Taking out frequency, taking out cell towers, because your cell towers are overwhelmed. It'll take out the voice with it and everything else that might be there. And anyone else that's relying on it, emergency medical systems and so forth. So, and that's the networking load. It was said yesterday by Ziggy that 80% of SVOD data is what people are seeing on the NBN and 200 gig a month, you know, and the uploads. Wait till those uploads change and you are streaming video to like the Nest that I said before, and you're subscribing to all these online services to monitor all these houses. As a company, I'm also trying to advise people on the coming future of how to manage this stuff. So people like Amazon and Azure and Microsoft have already got IoT management platforms, you know, but we know what happens when people get hacked and all this information gets out, the Sony hacks. What about when we have the Azure or AWS IoT hack and they took control of 10 billion devices? It's going to happen. It's not an if. So that's the battlefield. That's what we're worrying about right now. So this war is coming. And from what I hear, no one's prepared. The equipment, everything I look at is weak, you know. Everyone's writing their own, and it's all about the prettiness. It's all about getting this cool little device out to market, not about protecting it from what it could do. The Amazon Echo I've got out there, Alexa, who has a special spot in my heart, that's a picture over there, has access. She's not just a Siri. She can turn the light bulbs down, turn the temperature sensors down. What happens if you're in an environment, that example I said before about being in Calgary, someone hacks your house, turns down the temperature to 0 of your nursery, kills the pet, kills someone else. This is possible. You don't have to go via the device that's doing the temperature sensors. You could take out Alexa, who's got access to do these things. Or Siri, etc., etc. The other day, someone just won the bounty, millions of dollars, because they can remotely control iOS 9 iPhones now. Remotely exploit them. Imagine what they got access to on those. SMSs, banking, blah, blah, blah. So, there's a lot of talk. We need laws. We need vendors to be responsible. And we need it now, because the land rush is coming. Look at the amount of watches and devices and everything that's coming. It needs to involve everyone, not just the politicians. As I said, everyone over the age of 40 has no idea. The amount of times I have this conversation and do this kind of presentation and it's going, most of you are seeing VR for the first time. This is the world that some of us live in, that we are trying to talk to the legislative people and lawyers. I've got so many things happening with legal people going, where I've done consulting for big companies, I'm going, what happens if someone does this in a workplace? What happens if you say, don't wear your Google Glass, that's prescription? And the lawyers go, because he's got cameras. What if you want to forbid that in the workplace in a secure environment? But if you take it off, he falls down the stairs, you're liable. Had the law, one of the biggest companies in Australia had the internal counsel going, what's the likelihood of this happening how soon? I said, some of these things are coming out now. And there's not even HR laws. Forget about some of this other stuff. Just even how to deal with it in the workplace. That wearable cameras on police, sure. You can go buy them for yourself now. I can wander around the workplace. Well, Google Glass was one of those things. Recording all the time. I want scoping my life. We've got some problems. So technology hasn't much changed. It's just really the speed of which is happening. You know, it's the same thing. Nothing new about scoping. Just instantaneous. We had YouTube, we had broadcasting. So that's the war that's coming. Are you ready for any of this? For those, and there are quite a few vendors here, how important is to you? Is there any standards? Just because you might think you're secure, what about it, the interoperability? Alexa talks to 10 other vendors. Everybody's just not working together, so they're just opening it and making it very simple. This is the new world of IoT and wireless and everything that we are living in.
Thanks, Skeeve. That was fantastic. In the interest of time, we'll come back in 10 minutes with a bit of a break. And if you want to catch Steve on the sidelines, please go ahead. Thank you for that. Thank you.